saved a touchdown, most likely.
There goes Conor to the 40, to the 30, breaks a tackle at the 20, 10, 5, unbelievable! Touchdown!
And welcome back to an episode of the Cool Your Jets podcast. We're your hosts, Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. We were recording this immediately after Monday Night Football. And Michael, we've seen this movie from the New York Jets, I mean, how many times in the last 2 decades and even longer in the team's history? But specifically the last 2 decades, the perennial same old Jets, fourth quarter collapse, it just add insult to injury against the New England Patriots on primetime football. But this time, I have to say, it may have been the happiest I've been about a Jets game since 2019's game against the Cowboys, where Robbie Anderson had the 90-yard touchdown and Sam Darnold's return. This game was dangerously close to knocking the Jets out of the Trevor Lawrence conversation. When you look at the Jags' remaining schedule, considering that they should have the strength of schedule advantage over the Jets, that if the Jets win a game and the Jaguars lose every other game, which it seems like they will most likely do, that the Jets will be picking number 2 and be out of the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. You never know what could happen in the NFL, but for 3.5 quarters, it really seemed like the Jets were going to find a way to win this game. And somehow, in poetic fashion, the New York Jets collapsed to fall to 0-9 for the first time in franchise history. Michael, how are you feeling, man?
I mean, I'm still on cloud 9 right now. This is, I mean, it's like we're in
cloud 0-9. Cloud 0-9.
I should. Oh my God, I missed an opportunity there. I missed a golden opportunity. But I mean, we're kind of like in this bizarre world right now. Usually, if the Jets had a game like this where they blew a 10-point fourth quarter lead on primetime against the Patriots, I mean, we'd be so depressed right now. But this is the most invested I've been in a game since the season opener against the Bills last year. I mean, it is just so important for this franchise to get the number 1 pick. They are in such a deep hole. They have so little talent. They have so little leadership on the coaching staff. So to get that number 1 pick, to get the best prospect at the most important position in the game in a very long time, and to get the attraction to your head coaching spot that comes with him is so important for this team. So to win games at this point of the season just does not mean anything to me. So to win this game with Flacco starting, playing an insanely good game, would just, it would be tough. And it would, with the Jaguars looming right there, having the strength schedule advantage and a really tough schedule down the stretch, it would be really, going into the bye week, it would definitely kind of lead to some pessimism for the Jets going to the second half. But they found a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, as Adam Gase is very good at doing. So, I mean, I feel pretty good. And they did it in a fashion that is productive long-term. You had Denzel Mims play well. You had Bryce Hall and Jabari Zuniga get snaps. You saw Conor McGovern and George Fant played well on the offensive line.
No respect
Ashton
for
Davis.
Yeah, there you
well.
go. I was about to say.
And so there were just so many, key players who played well in this game also. So I think this is it didn't feel like it throughout the game because it was very close to not finishing this way. But in the end, this is about as good of an outcome as you could ask for.
Yeah, and the poetry that Nick Folk, who hit how many big kicks for the Jets over the years, and as Rich Eisen said on Twitter, this may have been the biggest of them all. If the Jets do indeed finish with the number 1 pick, and if Trevor Lawrence does come out and declare for the NFL draft, that this kick, and you can look back at this game and this moment and this night as the reason that Trevor Lawrence will be going to Florham Park.
Yeah, and hopefully he's on Twitter looking at how much we want him. So
hey, and the Jets didn't embarrass themselves. I mean, I would have liked Darnold to play it, not only because I'm rooting for the kid, but also, if Darnold plays well, it is a showcase for other teams. Maybe you can up that trade price. But the Jets didn't get embarrassed, which is important because I know I don't put much credence into the whole Trevor Lawrence is going to avoid the Jets. Because I was tweeting in the middle of the game. It's like, do you think that Trevor Lawrence is sitting on his couch watching this game happier that his chances of going to Jacksonville are higher? It's like, I don't think Trevor Lawrence really cares. And if you had to ask him, I would guess that he would prefer New York City over Jacksonville. But I guess it's New Jersey, but it's still New York City.
I mean, even so, the ownership in Jacksonville isn't exactly
and think about all the amount
better than the Johnsons.
And like the Jets have had plenty of player personnel issues and in-house fighting and problems with management, whatever. But Jacksonville is no better. I mean, they've had more players than the Jets in recent years get drafted and leave and have bitter spats between the owners and Coughlin and that whole mess down there. I mean, the Jaguars are as big, if not a bigger mess than the Jets are. And then when you look at the treasure trove of draft picks that the Jets have, the competent GM that I believe they have, I mean, the Jets, I mean, we've done the same podcast now probably 10 times, but the Jets are not a bad destination for a rookie quarterback. But back to tonight, or I guess last night by the time you're listening to it. Yeah, I mean, it was about as perfect of an outcome as you could have. I mean, I would have liked Darnold to play. Flacco, probably a better fit for Adam Gase's system. I think it just fits better with I mean, this is Dal Loggins calling plays, but it's still Adam Gase's playbook. Just fits better with a veteran quarterback. There are a few times tonight where the Patriots sent pressure and Flacco just threw it away or went to his hot read immediately. Didn't really have happy feet. I will say the offensive line probably played their best game of the whole season.
Yes.
And when you look at, that was kind of a storyline all offseason about does this offensive line have enough time to get together? Will it, be able to gel by week one? And I think the answer was no. I think Becton looked good, but it took time. I mean, they looked better than 2019's unit, but they've been a unit that I feel like for the most part has been getting better each and every week. And we said, it was like, oh, it's probably going to take until week 6 or week 7 for them to be fully gelled together. I mean, it's week 9. So they're still within that. They've had a complete time to ramp up and develop chemistry with each other. And I think you saw it tonight, even with Mekhi Becton going out. That'd be the only thing I would have changed about tonight. Hopefully Becton's all right. I think you have to consider shutting him down for an extended period of time because it's a chest injury, but I would imagine, speculating here, but that's probably related to the pec shoulder injury that he was battling a few weeks ago. It's just like, why re-aggravate it? He's good. This team isn't. Sit him for a while. If it's minor, I mean, they luckily they do have the bye weeks that he can get healthy, but I would just consider shutting him down. But going back to this game, Michael, I mean, this was a masterclass in tanking, and I don't want to just say by the New York Jets. It frankly seems like Bill Belichick and the Patriots were actively trying to lose this game at some points, and I don't know if that's just the fan in me or the conspiracy theorist in me. But the Patriots' clock management in the fourth quarter, it worked out. It always works out for Bill Belichick, but it was god awful. It kind of reminded me, and I said to my dad when I was watching, I was like, this is the greatest coach of all time. And you're telling me this is how he would handle this situation in the Super Bowl or with Tom Brady at a meaningful playoff game or something like that? No, I mean, they were running the ball, letting the clock drip all the way down. That final, I think they got the ball with 50 seconds to go, and they ran it. They threw screens. They ran a QB sneak. It was awful really until that last play was the only time they took a shot downfield, which they should have done honestly from the first play, but it worked out. So who am I to question Bill Belichick's genius? But I mean, it honestly looked like the Patriots were really going to blow this one. And it's funny, my entire life, this is the first time I've ever cheered for the Patriots to win, especially against the Jets. The amount of times that I've gone, I mean, I went to the exact same game last year, hoping for a Jets win on Monday Night Football against the Patriots, and they played their worst game maybe ever. And then this year, I'm cheering for the Patriots, and for 3.5 quarters, I was like, oh my God, the Jets are going to find a way to blow this. And by blowing this, I mean win this. But luckily, they found a way to lose in classic Jets fashion. It was really a perfect night. Michael, I guess we'll just bounce around some topics here. Let's start with the rookies. I think that's probably the most exciting part of this, and you've already talked about it a little bit. Let's go a little bit more in depth in Joe Douglas's draft class. You can throw Bryce Huff in there as well. What did you see from them? What was impressive? What were some of the negatives, I guess you saw? That last play, that the play we're talking about, that was either a miscommunication between Hall and Davis and zone coverage, which left Myers wide open to get them into field goal range. So that's a bit of a negative, but I thought Davis, clearly played his best game of the season, but had a really great game all around, I would say, unless, that last play. But just go in depth. From Becton to Mims to Davis to Pirine to the GOAT Braden Mann. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think Davis definitely stood out the most. He had a few big plays. There was a great tackle he made near the pylon to save a touchdown. He had a huge pass deflection on a potential first down on I believe it was 2nd and 20, but it was a long distance play in the fourth quarter that he broke up. And obviously the Patriots eventually converted it, but that was a hugely clutch play. And he had a few more good tackles around the field, but he made a lot of big plays. He also had the sack, which was probably a soft penalty call. I mean, he could have done a better job lowering his head and his shoulder because it was such a clean shot. But still, that was a good play to get off the chip and then get in there on the blitz for the sack. So he definitely stood out the most. Denzel Mims in the first half had some good contested catches in traffic again, showed some after the catch ability too. That wasn't something he did much of in college, but he showed some really in his in the Bills game, he showed a little bit. And then in this one as well, he's shown some after the catch ability. So that's promising considering it wasn't a big part of his game when he was at Baylor. So those two guys probably stood out the most.
And if they threw to Mims at all in the second half, the Jets might have actually
right.
held on and won this game. I mean, I think he got 1 or 2 catches, but
only one target in the second half.
And Perriman obviously statistically had the better game, but it seemed like Mims was the one who was having, a bigger effect, I guess, on the Patriots defense. Just at the start of the game, I guess Flacco's interception was a deep shot for Mims, but it seems like, going into the remaining weeks, he's the guy that you really, I'm pretty confident that he can be a starting receiver for the Jets next year. I think he probably will be. But over the next, what do we have left in this nightmare season? 7 games? Over the next 7 games, I just would like to see more and more Denzel Mims. Just every week, just give him the ball because, he looks like a real keeper.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely good to see Perriman play well. He's not your long-term answer, but I mean, going into next season, they have so many holes to fill, and eventually you're probably going to have to fill out some depth. So for him to show he's capable of making big plays in this offense definitely makes him a really good fit as a 4th receiver next year if you can bring him back on a cheap deal. So
exactly.
Hopefully you can get another number one. You have Crowder locked in the slot. Hopefully Mims is a starter for you, and you can get someone else. But Perriman has depth. This was a good step forward. Look, this was his first good game, so you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, but he was really good. And this is, what the Jets are hoping to get based on what he showed in December of last year. So hopefully he can, well, I mean, not necessarily hopefully because he's not under contract next season, but if he does continue to play this well, then he's definitely a prime target to be brought back next season.
Yeah, I think he's perfect for that receiver 4 role. He's pretty much exactly what you want. He's explosive. He's a good deep threat. If he does have to fill into a starting role like we saw him do last year in Tampa Bay, he was really effective. The big concerns with him, are staying healthy and being a consistent presence in the game. He has that Robbie Anderson thing. I mean, not all the blame should go on Robbie Anderson, but where they would disappear for periods in a game or maybe even games at a time. So consistency and injury, but he clearly has the talent. He has the speed, and he's shown throughout his career these breakout games where he gets hot, and he has stretches of games where he can put it together. So yeah, I definitely think they should bring him back, and then look to target either your late first, your early second, take a receiver there, and then boom, you have 2 super young receivers in Mims, one of the top slot options in the league in Crowder, and then you have an awesome depth guy in Perriman just at your receiving core, and that's ignoring whatever you're going to do at tight end and running back.
Yeah, and at running back, you did see, I mean, Frank Gore is still probably getting the ball too much. 12 carries to Perine 6. That's no good. I mean, you definitely have to. I mean, objectively, Frank Gore has been better than Perine this season, but I'm not better enough to warrant how many more carries he's getting. But Perine did have one good first down catch and a couple good short yardage conversions. But I would like to see more of Perine. He hasn't been good so far. He really hasn't broken a ton of tackles. His vision has been questionable at times, but I want to see him play. He's barely gotten any playing or as many touches as Gore has so far. So we definitely like to see more of him. And then Zuniga and Bryce Hall are getting playing time. They were, mysteriously absent for a long time. Took them quite a few weeks to get onto the field, but now we're finally starting to see them play. Nothing too notable from either of those guys in this game, but they're out there, they're playing. So it seems that we're going to see plenty of them throughout the second half of the season. And Bryce Hall, I feel like he played well because the only thing I remember from him was the one holding penalty, but I'm pretty sure he played quite a few snaps, and I don't remember him giving up any catches besides that, maybe 1 or 2. But I mean, Austin, Desir were much worse. So that's probably a good sign for Hall, but we'll see what the film and also his snap count, his coverage numbers show throughout the week. But at least those guys are out there and getting playing time, and that's huge for them in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think overall the story of this game is that it was the perfect Nania game, I guess is what I would say, is what you've been talking the last few weeks of, is literally just lose, be competitive, have the rookies play well, you know. And I guess I don't want to say you're the biggest Sam Darnold hater
I'm
out
not
there,
a Sam
but
Darnold hater.
but I don't know about that, Michael. The last few weeks would beg to differ, but clearly doesn't make Sam Darnold look that great. That Joe Flacco was able to come in here and have a great performance. I want to get your thoughts on that. Is that due mostly to all three receivers are healthy, the offensive line had a great game, and Flacco's generally just a better fit for Adam Gase's pocket passer offense? Or is there just a legitimate criticism that Joe Flacco is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold?
Well, I mean, obviously those things are a part of it. So you had Mims, Crowder, and Perriman. That helps. The offensive line played well, but also Becton was out for the majority of this game, I believe about 3 quarters. So he did have to deal with that. But this was just not even considering how well his teammates played or anything. This was by far better than any game Darnold has played this season. Darnold has played similar games his first 2 years, but this year this was the first good game period that a Jets quarterback has played this season. Flacco was, I mean, he was just money down the field. The Crowder touchdown was absurd. Uh, the one touchdown, the first one to Perriman, that was fantastic. And under pressure, there wasn't a lot of pressure, but when it came, he knew where to go. He's getting the ball out quick. He's throwing it away. Obviously, he had the predetermined deep shot interception late in the game, but for the most part, Flacco was really, really good in this game. I mean, ESPN gave him a QBR of 97.0. The perfect rating is 100. So he was really good in this game. And I mean, he's only played 3 games, so it's hard to say he's definitively better than Darnold right now, but this was better by far than any game Darnold has played this season. And, going for, at least based on the body of work we've seen so far, Flacco has been better than him. And again, it's a small sample size, but I mean, Darnold could come back and play well in his next game, but this was a great performance by Flacco, not even considering the supporting cast. I don't think that has to do with it too much because Darnold hasn't played with all three of these guys at once, but he has played with Crowder, Perriman, Mims throughout the season, or the last 2 games he had Mims. He's played with Crowder. Last year he had Crowder, Robbie Anderson, Ryan Griffin when he was still good, Le'Veon Bell. So although the offensive line wasn't good last year, obviously, at all, but I don't think that had to do with it too much in this game. Flacco was just playing really well in this one. His throws were just absolute money. So going forward, it's too hard to definitively say he's better than Darnold just because this was one game. He was terrible against the Dolphins and okay against the Cardinals, but this was a really good performance, and I don't think it had to do too much with the supporting cast. Could Darnold have played well in this one? If he played, then sure, I think he could have. Stephon Gilmore didn't play. The Patriots secondary is terrible. They've been terrible this season. They came in allowing the most yards per attempt in the league this season. So he definitely could have played well, but I don't think the supporting cast had too much to do with it. Although they played well, Flacco just independently of his surroundings was just playing really good quarterback in this game.
Who would have thought that this is the conversation that we'd be having halfway through the season? At the beginning, is Joe Flacco a better quarterback than Sam Darnold? I mean, it's depressing. You put it well at the beginning of the episode. I mean, 2020, this season has just been an absolute bizarro reality for this team. And if it ends in Trevor Lawrence or even Justin Fields, given the college season that he's having, I'd say it's absolutely worth it. This was an embarrassing loss, but it was a much needed loss. I feel quite relieved because you look at the remaining Jets schedule, they have a bye this next week. I mean, they're not going to lose or win anything there. But after that, you have the Chargers, who are playing well, with Justin Herbert at quarterback. They think they're only 2-6 or something. They're not having a great season, but they're certainly a more competitive and a better team than the Jets are. They've just lost some tough games. You have the Dolphins, who looked great under Tua last week against the Cardinals. That's probably a loss. You have the Raiders, who, while the Jets blew them out last year in a similar circumstance, the Raiders, didn't they just beat the Chiefs a few weeks ago? They're looking great under John Gruden. Then you go out west to the Rams, or excuse me, to the Seahawks. They're not winning that game. They're not beating the Rams the next week. They could maybe beat the Browns, but I mean, the Browns are having a playoff season this year as well. And then you close the season with the Patriots, which is on paper. And again, the Jets or the Jaguars could win any of these next games that they're not favored in. But I would say that the Patriots are the one game that you have to keep an eye on. But like you put it, the Jets played at their absolute best and the Patriots played at their absolute worst. And the Patriots still ended up winning. Week 17, the Patriots will be at home, presumably have Gilmore. And who knows, who will be healthy on the Jets roster. So clearly feel good about the Jets' chances at landing at number one. That was a big game. That was clearly a huge loss for the Jets.
I mean, like you said, the Patriots are the easiest team in their schedule by far. They're not a good team anymore. And this team played as well as they possibly could. I mean, this was easily their best offensive performance. And defensively, Cam Newton he threw the ball well, but he was very gun shy, did not want to attack downfield at all, missed some open receivers downfield, played good, and came through it at the end, but was not too explosive when he could have been. So this was a really good opportunity to win, and they still couldn't come up with it against their most favorable opponent. And like you said, every team left has a winning record except New England and the Chargers, who are a good team. They've just blown a ton of games this season. The biggest thing is that in terms of the tank race, the Jets have lost the games where they played well. Denver easily could have won that, blew it. Buffalo, they played pretty good in that game, competed with a really good team, but ended up blowing that one. And then this one, of course. So, I mean, if you're a tank fan, like I think you and I both are,
tank fan.
then this is they're doing what they need to do. They're losing the close games where they're playing well, and that's really important. So
Exactly.
I think objectively, it's better for the Jets to be where they are now than for them to be 2-7, 3-6, still out of the playoff race, but not in the Lawrence race, just by scoring a touchdown here against New England, or finishing off against Denver. Those wins wouldn't get them anywhere, but getting Trevor Lawrence can change everything for this team.
In my mind, I think the Jets have two things that they need to make sure they accomplish over the next few months. And if they do these two things, they'll be set up very well for success. Because before we get into those two things, I think Joe Douglas is proving with this draft class that it's arguably, and the bar is quite low, but arguably the best draft class the Jets have had in years. So I think he can draft. He has a treasure trove of draft picks over the next 2 years, and presumably he'll continue to build on it if he's trading Darnold, or you never know what else could happen in the next few years. He has a boatload of cap space. We've seen that he knows how to manage a team, but these two things are they need to make sure they get that number one pick, which is the easier of the two. And the second one is they have to nail this head coaching hire, because if they do those two things, in addition to having Joe Douglas build this team, we're going to see a legit long-term winner in Florham Park, New Jersey, which I don't think we've been able to say maybe since the early 2000s for the Jets, but even then they were still having a losing season every other year. So they have a real opportunity in front of them. Speaking of the head coaching hire, I wanted to get your thoughts. Actually, really quickly before we get into some side news, just continuing on with this game, some underrated rapid fire MVPs, I want to say, this game. Harvey Lange looked quite good at inside linebacker for, in comparison to what the Jets have had at inside linebacker. I'm not saying Harvey Lange is a long-term starter there, but clearly a good depth piece because of his values on his values.
Yeah, I mean, he was weirdly good because he was so bad in the Bills game.
He was terrible in the Bills game, but the Jets started to use him more as a blitzer, which I think played more to his natural strengths. So Harvey Lange, shout out to him. John Franklin Myers, fully fought.
And then the Pats did really adjust to it at the end of the game. They called draws, screen passes, and that's what coaches do. You adjust to stuff. I don't think Jets fans know what that looks like.
Clear Jets' personal favorite, John Franklin Myers, had a great game. Fully fought Akasi, as I just said. both. I think the Jets have some studs in that front seven. I mean, the defensive line is the easiest position group in all of football to find talent at, but the Jets have a pretty good history of,
I
of
mean, the
having
Jets have made it look easy. I don't know if necessarily because
out
we're
of
so used
all
to seeing them
position
do
groups,
it.
defensive line.
I think running back is probably the easy. I mean, you're probably
Okay,
right. It's probably running
okay.
back then defensive
Running
line.
back or defensive line, that you got me there. But I would say that defensive line is the deepest talent pool. But you're right. I mean, you can draft a guy in the third and start him, and you're looking at a good starter there. But I would say those three guys on defense, you could throw in Ashton Davis, but we've already talked about him. And then on offense, Conor McGovern, I thought this was probably his best game of the season. The offensive line as a whole, really, I thought they just had a really solid game. That would probably be it. Braden Mann, though, for special teams, had a couple of really nice punts in this one. But the tank MVP, though, Pierre Desir. And I said on Twitter that I'd be getting a jersey if the Jets somehow found a way to lose this game. So, Michael, I'm going to need one of your bootleg jersey websites to find me a cheaper version. I'm not going to pay $100 for a Pierre Desir.
What are you talking about? I buy official New York Jets gear.
I'm not paying $100 for a jersey that I'm just going to put duct tape over and put tank on it. But I will find a way to get a Pierre Desir jersey. I'm a man of my word. But looking ahead to some brief news that we've seen this week, Jim Harbaugh, I saw that news this week that, potentially he's looking for a way out of Michigan and back to the NFL. He interviewed with the Jets in 2009. There was rumors about his hire in 2015, even 2 years ago. I think the Jets even put out an official statement at the end of 2018 saying they weren't interested in Jim Harbaugh. But clearly there have been some ties between Woody and Harbaugh. He is a Harbaugh. There is the connection that Joe Douglas was in Baltimore, where Jim Harbaugh's brother has been a coach there for over a decade. So there's that minor connection. Woody loves to make a splash. He has been in the Super Bowl. It does make sense from that perspective, but I know I'm against it, and I believe you are as well, Michael. Really quickly, just for tagging this on at the end of the podcast here, but talk about why, or maybe you've changed your mind, you don't think Jim Harbaugh should be anywhere near the Jets' top candidates for their 2021 head coach.
Yeah, he's near the bottom of my list. I mean, I think I'd just rather be more forward thinking, go for a guy who's on the way up rather than a guy who's on the way down. I mean, Michigan's results, they've won games, but they've definitely not met standards under him, met expectations. Their defense has consistently been better than their offense. They haven't really developed quarterbacks well. So, and especially now, because Michigan obviously just took a pretty embarrassing loss and their season isn't off to a great start. So to get him while he's getting shoved out is definitely not, the point where you want to be getting a coach like him. So, overall, though, I just want, we've talked about Bieniemy, Arthur Smith, Joe Brady. I want someone who's on the way up, not a big name whose best days are almost a decade behind us now. So, that's really my main thing. I really want an up and comer more so than a big name. And also he's a very kind of, he has a shtick, kind of like Adam Gase, and that can wear out. It wore out in San Francisco. It's wearing out in Michigan. And he's that sort of rah guy, so that really, I'm not a huge fan of that.
It's the hard ass thing that that we're seeing with Greg Williams, that I'm sure if Jim Harbaugh came in his first year here, they might be pretty good, but it works better in college when you have new players every year and a 4-year or 5-year max, I guess, of players being around that. But yeah, I agree. I even used Jim Harbaugh as my example in that Arthur Smith article a few months ago as the type of hire the Jets shouldn't make. Don't have Woody Johnson meddling and hire a big name like that. Let Joe Douglas pick his guy. I clearly trust Joe Douglas as the mastermind behind the Jets for the next, hopefully, decade. Don't pick a guy that is going to try to take personnel control. Take a guy that Joe Douglas is comfortable with, that has worked with, that understands that it's not his roster, but it's his team. That Joe Douglas gets to make the draft picks. He gets to sign free agents. He's going to work with you, but you're not going to have final say over the roster. And Jim Harbaugh, that's part of the reason he left San Francisco, is he wanted more roster control. And even if he comes in and says he won't, I do not trust that even if the Jets have any sort of success, or they don't, either way, a few years down the line, Jim Harbaugh is not going to be talking to Woody Johnson saying, hey, I think I should have more control over this. I could totally talk myself into it. I talked myself into Adam Gase. If he's coming in and he knows he doesn't have roster control and I think he can build a good staff and he's not going to be calling plays. And, I do like that he's been a head coach and he's in college and he has Super Bowl experience. There's some positives there, but overwhelmingly, I would much rather roll the dice on a guy like Arthur Smith, who is, if Arthur Smith becomes the hire, Michael, it'll feel like the Jets actually won a Super Bowl just with how much we pushed him. I feel like we've pushed him into the top. He would have been a top candidate regardless, but I'm just going to say not many people were talking about Arthur Smith, Michael, until we started talking about him. So,
we're taking full credit. We're not humble
I was
at
just
all
about to
here
say,
at Jets.
I think we're insecure and we need to take credit for every little thing. And Arthur Smith is going to be that on this podcast. John Franklin Myers, Arthur Smith, any others, Michael?
Bryce Huff.
Bryce Huff. Yeah, thank you. We made Bryce Huff by getting him on this podcast. So
I don't think he would have even made the team if he didn't come on the podcast.
I got to say, Joe Douglas is on his phone way too much during Jets games to not have a Twitter account. He's totally scrolling through Twitter. So you're telling me Joe Douglas didn't see that interview and say, you know what, this is a pretty smart kid? Going to keep him around?
I wonder what he is doing on his phone.
He's totally looking at Twitter. What is he, emailing people? Text? I guess he could be texting.
Is he playing Among Us?
He's probably playing Among Us. Yeah, that's true. I think that'll do it for us. I don't think we have anything else here. When you look at the Jaguar schedule, I know I read out the Jets one, but when you think about the Jaguar schedule, it's quite scary because they play the Packers. They're not winning that. They're not beating the undefeated Steelers. They're probably not beating the Browns, but they're at home. You never know. They have the Vikings on the road. The Vikings are their easiest team in the remaining schedule, but you look at the way Dalvin Cook has been running the last few weeks, that's not happening. Home against King Arthur and the Titans, that's not happening. Against Baltimore, that's not happening. Chicago at home, I could maybe see that if Chicago can fall apart the last few weeks, and then in Indianapolis, probably not happening. So they have a lot of tough games.
They did beat the Colts
upcoming.
in week 1.
They did beat the Colts week 1, but I think that's one of those things where you're not going to sweep them. Maybe you can steal one game. But because, hey, Jake Luton looks pretty good. They almost beat the Texans. If Minshew's been competitive as well. So whoever's at quarterback, maybe they could steal a game against the Browns, the Vikings, or the Bears or something.
I think the Browns and Bears are going to end up having losing records by the time they play them. And the same thing for the Jets with the Browns. So I think the Browns will be interesting.
I think the Browns are going to be in that playoff competition. I think the Browns might actually make the playoffs, but the Bears.
But the thing about the Browns is that they beat the bad teams. It's the good teams they struggle with. So they're probably still a big problem.
And they're playing the Jags and the yeah, exactly. We're talking about them against the Jags and Jets. I think the Bears are the team that I really think they have a chance to win at. It's at home. It's late in the season. I think that's around. I think the Bears will have collapsed by then and lost quite a few games. So you never know. I think that's going to do it for us. I know I'm going to end this podcast and think of something else I wanted to say, but I'm pretty sure that's it. We will most likely do a mailbag during the bye week, so we'll have that for you next Monday, sticking with the weekly podcast. And when we're done with this treacherous season and we get more towards the coaching hire, obviously, we're going to have a lot of episodes during then, probably previewing each candidate, talking about it. And then this is months away, so I don't even know why I'm talking about this. But when we get more towards the draft and free agency, we'll go back to multiple episodes every week. But right now, we're probably just going to stick with the once a week episodes, unless we want to extend that mailbag through multiple days or whatever. But Michael, that was the most stressed out I've been felt about a Jets game in a while. That was fun. I've seen that movie a million times. It was pretty exhilarating to be on the other side of it and finally have your team, for today, come through. I know there's probably a segment of Jets fans I don't think they would have made it through this entire podcast, but there's probably a segment of Jets fans who wanted the Jets to beat the Patriots on primetime football. It's hard as a fan to cheer for your team to lose, but trust me, in 7 weeks, or I guess 8 weeks, but in 7 games, it'll 100% be worth it if the Jets end up with that number 1 pick. Nobody will care about a meaningless win against the Patriots in November, who are a bad team this year. I will take Trevor Lawrence and I'll take sweeping the Patriots every year than beating them one time and for a terrible football team. So if you're in any way upset about this win, I know it's embarrassing. I know this team is a joke. They found another way to lose. It's going to be shitty sitting through these next 7 games, but if they can find a way to just lose these games, it'll 100% be worth it. If they win a game or 2, it completely ruins all this hard work that's gone into the season.
Yeah, exactly. I do not enjoy really rooting for them lose. Like, I mean, I look at all the individual players. Like, I want to see guys like Fadakasi do well, Denzel Mims, Bryce Hall, Ashton Davis. I want to see these guys do well. So it doesn't feel good to want these guys to not succeed and to see them be disappointed and angry about losing. It doesn't feel good, but as a fan, we're rooting for the logo, we're rooting for the franchise, not necessarily the individuals. So, what's most important, what gets them closer to a Super Bowl is not winning a game at 0-8. It's losing and getting closer to securing the greatest asset that's ever been available to a team, really in modern history, in Trevor Lawrence and everything that comes with him, the respect for the organization, the head coaching position becoming more attractive. So, if winning Super Bowl is your goal, then losing is what gets the Jets there quicker, not winning these meaningless games. It's definitely not fun, but it's going to be worth it, as you said.
All right, there you have it. You can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter. You can follow Michael at Michael_Nania, myself at Ben W. Blessington. You can follow at Jets X Factor on Twitter and go to jetsxfactor.com for the best Jets content out there. Our podcast is there in addition to Spotify and iTunes. Just search Cool Your Jets. We're also sponsored by Manscaped. Go to manscaped.com and use the code Cool Your Jets for 20% off and free shipping. Michael, it's been a pleasure. That was a stressful ball game, but Nick Folk, in classic Folk hero fashion, wins it for the Jets. As far as I'm concerned, this is a Victory Monday, or I guess a Victory Tuesday podcast. We're celebrating. We're popping the champagne. 7 games to go, ladies and gentlemen, and Trevor Lawrence will be a New York Jet.
Arnold takes the snap, looks left under pressure, bullets one over the middle, and he's got Crowder at the 10, cuts it back, at the 5, goal line!
That's over the middle, in the air, picked off. Brian Poole to the end zone, touchdown. The punter to beat, and the punter brings him down. Braden Mann saved a touchdown, most likely.
There goes Garner to the 40, to the 30, breaks a tackle, at the 20, 10,